Taylor, former chemist and pharmaceutical researcher and director. I have good news and bad news today for everyone. Good news, neither George nor Nico is wearing a woman's bathing suit.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Please, thank you so much. And bad news is... now, someone has told me that Sidebar's been banned, blocked, what is it, suspended, disabled?
They deleted our account.
Deleted from Instagram.
Yeah, apparently they were doing a search on the sexiest podcasters.
Get closer to them.
Sorry.
Yeah.
They were doing a search on the sexiest podcasters, and they found Nico and George.
Yeah,
They just got rid of them immediately.
We can't have these guys on.
Well, I mean, look, we've been talking about this, Karen, for a while. I mean, we talked about 2 years ago and 3 years ago with all the information around COVID and the truly misinformation. It's a term that it's been thrown around there for a long time. We were worried more about the censorship. We said, look, I mean, we got to share ideas. We got to share thoughts. How do you know someone has a crappy idea? Because someone shared a good idea. But someone was allowed to share that crappy idea. And then in the court of public opinion and through common sense and logical reasoning and critical thinking, meaning sparring with ideas in your mind, you get to figure things out. I mean, that's what juries do. That's what people should do during investigations. And when you start squelching that, when you start censoring that, and you only hear one opinion, I mean, that's trouble. Why do they want to do that? Because they can't defend their own side. When you have to shut up the other side, that means you don't have a position that's rooted in logic and evidence. And so, you know, I figured it was going to happen. They shadow ban us on Facebook on R-rated Christianity, and we've been dealing with that for years now. And so all we can do is just keep forging forward. But yeah, so our Sidebar Instagram account has been deleted. From what I was
Those
told.
were such great videos, I have to say.
That's Salo and Dom.
So
Salo's
great.
putting those together.
So, Salo, what does this mean? When are we going to be back on? What's going to happen?
I don't know if we're going to be back on. And Dom was telling me, should we develop another account? And I'm like, well, we did develop another account. The reason that we were banned or deleted is the same thing. So they're going to delete us again because of the topics we're discussing.
But you hear people all the time coming up with new accounts so that they can get back on.
Yeah, but
then it's a game.
It's not just the topics we're discussing. It's the things that we're saying.
Of course.
It's the actual content. There's a lot of people talking about those topics, but they either say nothing meaningful.
Yeah.
And we try to get under the hood on this stuff, and then we go places where we probably shouldn't go.
Yeah.
But this is America.
I don't know what that means, shouldn't go. I mean, there's no place that we shouldn't go unless you're breaking the law. And of course, I don't encourage that. You know, you're right. It ends where my nose begins. We've talked about that before many, many times. But I mean, we should be able to talk about everything. I mean, that's why I'm very happy to see a lot of these comedians stepping up. I mean, I keep bringing up Bill Maher. I mean, he's a comedian, so he's maybe self-serving, but I think he's sincere about it. I disagree with him on many of his positions on issues, but man, I love the fact that he encourages both sides to debate. He actually models disagreement. He brings people that he disagrees with on his show, and of course he's got to be snarky. I mean, he's a comedian. He's got to bust chops, but he shows people and he models respectful disagreement, passionate at times. And then hope you'll come back on the show again. We need more of that. This is ridiculous what we're doing. So we should be able to talk about anything, almost anything.
That's one of the reasons Piers Morgan is getting a lot of better and bigger, because he's allowing these discussions on air. So it's kind of Piers Morgan Uncensored. So he's having these conversations, and people like that.
Yeah, Piers got famous. Remember, Karen, when Ben Shapiro really made him look bad on the gun control debate, and then but he course corrected. Good for Piers to be humble about it. And then to come back and look, he's talking about build back better. Yeah. I mean, he built himself back better. Megyn Kelly, the same thing. I mean, she's doing wonderful. And so, look, I mean, we need more voices out there and people to be able to talk. So it's par for the course. It's unfortunate. But
So what do we do now? We thank God that Twitter's still up. We got a Twitter account. We got a TikTok account. So if you're listening right now and you're watching online, please, if you have a Twitter account, on our sidebartv.com, you can find the different accesses to the different social media platforms. So we want to thank Janet. Good morning, Janet. And Patty K is logged on. Kathy, Ray, Christopher, Alex, and Deborah. If you guys have a Twitter account, please follow us on Twitter because Twitter is going more YouTube style. So right now we're live. We're streaming live on Twitter as well, and we'll be posting on TikTok as well.
It's so funny that the Sidebar gets banned, blocked, whatever from Instagram, but the same thing is happening with this FBI whistleblower. He's telling the truth, yet, well, I'm assuming that he's telling the truth because anybody that would come before everyone and tell the story would be an idiot if they weren't telling the truth.
Well, let me tell you what makes me think that he's more credible than not credible. Because when the response from the quote-unquote opposing side, and there really should not be an opposing side, think about this. The Democrats should not be opposing. They should be wanting the truth also. When they start calling him names and they call him a domestic terrorist and they want to say he's involved in January, or I think there's 3 of them, and they start name calling him to silence, that's when you know that, wait a minute,
There's something to
deeper.
this.
There's this tribalism in its worst, and there's something going on here. Maybe what they're saying is hurting. And then you combine that, and George and I were talking right before we got on the shows right now, and you combine that with what we learned from the Durham report. I mean, look, there's really, we're really under the hood now. And this is what I really want to encourage Democrats. They should be seeking the truth also. This should not be a Republican endeavor or a conservative or libertarian endeavor or independent endeavor. This should be everybody's endeavor. We should want credibility in our governmental institutions. I mean, we're going to talk about this on the show, Karen. I'm sure the origination of the FBI back to J. Edgar Hoover. People kind of just blow over that about how the FBI, when it was founded, and how it was run by J. Edgar Hoover for decades. And we only found out the truth about that after he passed on. And that's real. I mean, illegal listening in, and there's before Title III, and even when there was, they circumvented the FISA courts. I was talking to Patrick about this also in our office, and he's got a really historical context to this, and he educates me all the time when we talk about these issues. But there's a lot of revelation that we've seen these last week that a lot of people knew about, other people kind of speculated about, but now other people know. And I would encourage Democrats and both to work together to bring back credibility to these governmental institutions.
I was thinking about Hillary Clinton's so-called concession speech on November 9th of 2016, and how she said that she had called Donald Trump and she had congratulated him, and that she was we should be supporting Trump thereafter to try to make this a better nation for everybody. And I'm just thinking about what a pack of lies that was, because that really wasn't the end of her campaign against Trump. It was frankly the beginning, and it became a very surreptitious and nefarious campaign. And so the very things that she ultimately ended up, and you could tell she was filled with BS, because over the next couple of years, she went on the air saying that he was, what did she call him, an illegitimate president. So here we have this ridiculous network, completely illegal and totally corrupt, completely un-American, communistic, socialistic in nature. You have this horrible network between the Clinton campaign, you have the FBI, you have politicians, you have the legacy media, and almost an unlimited number of other Washington insiders working together to undermine a duly elected president. This is what's going on, and it's being completely facilitated by this corrupt FBI. And I think Harriet Hageman, during the hearing this past week, called it out. She goes, nobody's going to name names, but I'm going to name names. And she called them out. She said, and this is frankly where I think the weakness of not just really the Durham report, because the Durham report was sort of all dressed up with nowhere to go. It spent a lot of money. It's 4 years late. It came after 3 years of the Mueller report, basically concluding the same thing. I mean, Mueller came real close. He was trying to get to an indictment, and he couldn't, because he knew that if he tried to indict him, that during discovery, that all the names would have to be named, Nico. I'm assuming that's how the process works. Durham basically went all the way to the end, didn't call out any names. Why isn't anybody being indicted? Frankly, I mean, where the hell is Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Andrew McCabe, James Comey, right? Merrick Garland, Christopher Wray, and dare I say it, a Barack Obama. This all happened in the Obama administration. The idea that Barack Obama knew nothing about this? I mean, I want to say some strong terms on the air here, because it's the only way to really convey it, but this is a load of crap. So Harriet Hageman's right. We have a corrupt FBI. And so how do you fix that, Nico?
Well, you allow the good people. Look, there's a lot of good people in these organizations. I mean, we don't want to paint with a broad brush, but the leadership, it's the echelon, the people in power. I mean, when you talk about tyranny and what that means, I mean, these people believe that they run the country, and they have an idea of how the country should run and what you should think and how things should go, and they believe they're untouchable. I mean, so I would encourage more of this. We need more whistleblowers. I mean, there was an IRS whistleblower. There was different whistleblowers to come out, and we used to, and Democrats used to like whistleblowers. I mean, support whistleblowers. I mean, if anybody, it doesn't matter. This is why objective truth needs to matter. And we got to come back to an agreement on what we believe is right and wrong and a moral compass. I mean, more people need to come out. The good people and they need to step up to have true reform. I mean, there's a lot of people that argue that the FBI should be dismantled. Okay, I'll listen, and I'll listen to those ideas. I don't claim to be an expert or have a true finalized opinion on that, but it definitely needs to be reformed.
But why would you say dismantled when...
I don't say that, other people.
Okay, so why would somebody say dismantle it? Because I keep on thinking of like defund the police.
Yeah.
And we all know that has just turned horrible across the country.
Yeah,
So-
governmental agencies are different than beat
yes.
cops. I mean, you're talking about people that are responding to aggravated assault charges, robbery, murders, sexual assaults, thefts, vandalism, things like that. That's different than a federal Secret Service or FBI or DEA or any federal agency that's doing broader investigations or bigger investigations. Nothing against the beat cop and the local law enforcement, but there's a difference. I mean, they should be working synergistically together. When I was in office, we had a
Right.
border prosecution unit that we started, and we worked with a lot of different governmental and state agencies to work on border prosecution issues, which human trafficking was an issue back then, of course, drugs. I mean, I don't remember hearing...
How many years ago was that?
Well, I've been out of office 4.5 years now.
Okay, so it's still a huge problem.
Oh, yeah.
But now, what's happening?
Yeah. So I think the problem is we start using terms and then we use them too broadly. Defund the police. Criminal justice system reform. What does that mean? What do you mean by that? I mean, I'm trying to understand. Gun control. What do you mean by that? I mean, inclusion. What do you mean by that? I mean, so we and we don't get deep enough into those terms to define them.
Nico, we're talking about directors of the FBI, deputy directors of the FBI, special agents of the FBI. At some point, I hear this a lot. I do, and I think there's some merit to it, and I'm inclined not to go against it. But there's a part of me that's troubled by this. We keep saying all those wonderful people in the FBI. I mean, how in the world is this all? I know, but we hear. I mean,
got it. I get
Hannity
it.
is a big one on this.
Yeah.
He always throws that in. It's a great qualifier, but at some point, this has to be facilitated. Because when you look at all the individuals involved, you got to really step back and say, exactly how deep does this go? I don't know if dismantling is the right word, but we got to get the rot out. And
I
it's
don't
a
think
lot
all
deeper than we
those
thought.
wonderful people. I think there's a lot of wonderful people. There's a difference. The terms matter, and we need
They
to
do.
use the proper terms.
Okay, we will continue this conversation next on Sidebar. Still in these organizations like the FBI and all the way down to local police in our cities. But George, you said, well, how deep does this go? And so my question, which is so simple and kind of too simple, is okay, if there are good people in these organizations, yet they have continued to function with the bad guys in it, and they're getting away with it and have for years. Well, what difference does it make if there's a few good people? I mean, it just continues in this giant snowball of or get out of the way.
Look, I mean, they're the ones that have to pay their bills. I'm not condoning this. I mean, this is where they have to pray about it. If they're people of faith, they have to pray about it. They have to be strategic. We always say, be shrewd as a snake, but innocent as a dove, right? But and then do maybe these people start the dam from breaking. And they start the trend of more people speaking out. But I get the pressure. I understand. I'm not condoning it. I'm saying, remember, we talk about someone that doesn't have that courage, and I don't mean this to be disrespectful or condescending, but it does take courage. Those three individuals that were on, I mean, they've been called names. I mean, I heard one of them tell the story. I forgot which one it was, where they spoke out. They were transferred to another company, another city, and they relocated. They sold their house First day at the new location, then they're put on administrative suspension with no pay. I mean, if that's not deliberate, I mean, when you look at the mens rea, the criminal intent of something, that's terrible. I mean, that's horrible. How is that? How should that be condoned? And how is that behavior that should be becoming of an agency that wants respect? If you want respect, you have to earn it. If you want credibility, you have to earn it. You don't just demand credibility. That doesn't mean credibility. That's authority and power. And if you're going to force that, that's something different. That is what, as Patrick and I were talking about, tyranny. That is true tyranny, when you're trying to force something on somebody and not earn it. This country was built after earning things. And you earn respect and you earn credibility, in my opinion. And this is not how you do it. So we need to encourage, we need to create there's another word, right? A safe place or a safe avenue for people to feel like they can speak out, but not just speak out, because I don't like a lot of people clanging tambourines. Speak out and then have the proof to back it up, of course, because I mean, you got to have evidence. And so these people spoke very credible. Again, I don't know if I didn't watch the hearings. I just saw the clips like everybody else and some of the commentary after. I didn't have time to watch all of it. But again, I would really I truly pray. I mean, I mean this. At night when Davi and I pray, we pray for unity in this country. I truly pray that Democrats and Republicans can start coming together. And I pray against this tribalistic mindset where I don't care what my tribe does. And this applies to both sides, by the way. I think it applies more to Democrats, unfortunately, but I mean, it does apply to both sides. That no matter what my side, if it does it, it's okay. That's just it. My side did it, it's okay. We got to get away from that. And we've got to start, again, why I like Bill Maher, he calls out, quote unquote, his side. We need to start pursuing truth unapologetically. And then I think you can have reform. We didn't get it here overnight. We're not going to correct it overnight.
I think that's right. I think these guys were this is truly heroic. And this is what real courage comes in. This is what real coming out courage looks like. Okay? It doesn't take any courage to come out and say you're trans today. You're going to be applauded by those in control of the microphone. The majority of people aren't on board, but those in control of the microphone, other than these microphones, will support that. It doesn't take any courage to do that. It takes courage to go against the individuals that hold the levers of power. And so Garrett O'Boyle, Special Agent Garrett O'Boyle, Special Agent Steve Friend, and I want to say their names because they deserve to be said, and I think it's Staff Operations Specialist Marcus Allen. They deserve to be applauded. And I think society needs to rally around them in any way necessary, frankly, to make sure they're safe and to make sure that their families have what they need. I was going to say to pay the bills, keep the lights on, get food on the table. These men deserve congressional protection. I don't know by what mechanism that would be possible, Nico, but they certainly deserve societal support. This is what courage looks like. And Nico's right. The more of this you see, the more impossible it becomes for the deep state, which we now know exists. It's no longer a conspiracy.
Yeah, that's funny you said that. Gosh, I was talking to somebody.
It's no longer deep, is it? Now it's out in the open. And if Trump has provided a social service, it's at least that he pulled a rug off the rot so that we can clearly see what has happened to this country inside the Beltway. This is a disgrace. This is why we say, Nico, every time these guys bitch, I don't know if you can say that on the radio, but I guess it's too late.
You just did.
Every time these guys are complaining about something, you know they're doing it. And by these guys, I'm talking about the Democrat machinery. That's who I'm talking about, and the legacy media. If they're complaining about something, you know they're doing it. So we now know, can you believe this? Between the Durham report and between this whistleblower hearing, we now know without any shadow of a doubt that the only Russian collusion was between the FBI and Igor Danchenko, who was a Russian spy, basically that they had been following since 2011, who provided the so-called Russian disinformation to a British intelligence officer by the name of Christopher Steele, who then authored, you remember, the dossier, which is a very nice word for report. And who funded all this, by the way? The Hillary Clinton campaign, right? Led by the individual who supposedly conceded to President Trump and then said she was going to work to support him, but then shortly after said he was an illegitimate president. And then the FBI used this nonsense to facilitate an operation that failed to keep him from getting in office. But then when he got in office, did everything they possibly could to undermine him every one of those 4 years. So this is an outrage. And the way we stop it is by exercising the rights in the Bill of Rights. Do not allow yourself to be silenced. Just make sure you're not just making noise, but you're making informed noise. Wow.
Man, go
I
Karen.
know.
Just say something. Well, no, there's a lot there. I mean,
I
look,
know.
I was talking to a friend. I think I said it last week on the show, and she doesn't like Donald Trump, and she goes, but I have to say, and she was very calm about it. I have to say that I've never seen someone more investigated than this man, and he's got to be. And I don't know if I'm trying to get her words right. The cleanest guy out there, because he would have been. I mean, as much as they've looked at him, because I don't like him, but man, I mean, you could tell that she was thinking this through. Look, I get it. Personality, policies. I made that distinction a long time ago. Personality versus policies. Do I wish he would do things differently? Sure. Is his style completely my style? No. Do I like his courage? Yes. I don't know his motivations. I can't speak for his heart. That's between him and the Lord. Does he believe in God? Is he saved? I don't know. That's again. I'm going to judge his fruit. How do you judge a tree? By its fruit. I'm going to judge his fruit. And his fruit to me are his policies. I just think there's a lot of vindication for the man. I mean, you got to at least hand that to him. If you like him or not, it's a lot of vindication. And if you think that the country is going crazy left, crazy progressive, socialist, Marxist, whatever you want to, communist, whatever you want to term you want to use it, then what is the antidote to that? What is it? Who is strong enough to go against that, and that has that fortitude and that perseverance and that gravitas, or whatever descriptive you want to use, and that can sustain that?
You've said it 100 times before. If somebody says a lie about you, you're like, you just go nuts and crazy. And this has been years now, and he makes fun, he makes jokes about it. But I mean, that in itself is a trait.
But
that
this
is like,
this is what George and I were talking about also. This is why he doesn't need to do anything gimmicky anymore. I mean, for sure, stop. You've been vindicated on many levels, and you just ride that wave. Just say, guys, this is what I was telling you about. They're coming after you. I'm standing in the way. That was a great tagline. Whoever came up with that from a marketing standpoint, I thought that was great. And now he's got the evidence to actually back it up. I mean, that should be his campaign, his slogan. And then you just, all this, and this vindication and what's happening. But then also people have to compare these 2.5 years now versus his 4 years. Again, when you're going to talk about a side-by-side, if that's going to be the ticket, if it's going to be Trump versus Biden again, you're going to have Biden's 4 years versus Trump's 4 years. Forget about what you think about anybody's personality, whether you think Biden is weekend at Bernie's and Trump is bad Cheeto man. Whatever you think about them personally and his tweets, you know, you got to look at their policies. And are all Americans, Republicans, Democrats, independents alike, every ethnicity, are they better off under the policies and ideas under Trump or the policies and ideas under Biden? What is our standing internationally? What is our standing on the border? What is our standing with fentanyl and death in our youth and schools and freedom and parental control over your children and what a child is? And I mean, you just name it. We can go on and down the road. And then the economy and recessions and all this stuff. So it's going to be a true side-by-side comparison. I don't think we've ever George is our in-house historian. I don't think we've ever had a true side-by-side comparison like that in any election, but especially a presidential election, a 4 to 4 year comparison.
What sort of, please elaborate on that. I mean, what sort of comparison would you want to, particularly would you want?
4 years. I mean, 4 years of performance, not speculation. 4 years of performance. Someone that was president for 4 years, and then someone that's trying to be president again.
with anything, the economy, foreign affairs.
I mean, do a
border.
chart. Do a chart and compare where we're at with each one of them. I'm saying.
So you had his performance inside government for 4 years, across a bunch of performance indicators, and now he's been out for 4 years, or he will have been out for 4 years. And then how do things look? I mean, is that simply what you're asking?
Yeah,
for?
I'm just. I think it's going to be interesting because you got 4. We know what it looked like under Trump for 4 years.
Yeah, exactly.
And then by the time that the election happens again, it's going to be almost 4 years. You're going to know what it looked like under Biden as president for 4 years. Exactly. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
I've never had that before.
No, I think, but we're here, right? We're doing that comparison. We're living that right now. We're evaluating right now, and there's a bunch of people who are doing really great. I think Heritage.org is doing some fantastic work looking at and arguing for that kind of side-by-side analysis. I mean, it's the difference is glaring. Can it be more glaring? I mean, is there anyone who can think clearly right now who doesn't see a total difference between the way the world was under Trump and the way it is right now? I mean, are you kidding me?
But I hate to say this, but just yesterday I was driving behind a car with a Biden sticker, and I see them a lot. And it's not the old ones, it's the new ones. And I want to hurry up and drive to see who's driving the car.
Dr. Charles
But
Weber,
I don't want to waste my gas.
I got to give him credit. Dr. Charles Weber was my former analytical chemistry professor in college. And he said, you know, George, don't waste your time on one particular kind of person. He said it's those individuals who are never at any danger of accepting good advice. Okay, and yeah, unfortunately, we have individuals who, you know, what did we say last week? Are addicted to safetyism. They're addicted to that comfort zone. They don't want to be nudged out of that comfort zone. They don't want. They're sort of Schultz from Hogan Heroes. I don't know if you remember their old show.
Yes.
I see no evil.
I hear no
I hear nothing.
I know nothing. I
Nothing,
see
yes.
and there's a, you know, ignorance, they say, is bliss for a reason. Because if you're ignorant, there's really no motivation to change. The problem is it'll kill you at some point, probably, depending on what it is. But I want to read this, and I'd like to get your thoughts on it, Nico and Karen. Quote, "The objective facts show that the FBI's handling of important aspects of the Crossfire Hurricane matter were seriously deficient." This is the FBI's investigation into so-called, you know, Russian collusion. "Based on review of Crossfire Hurricane and related intelligence activities, we conclude that the Justice Department and FBI failed to uphold their important mission of strict fidelity to the law. FBI records prepared by Peter Strzok in February and March 17th show that at the time of the opening of Crossfire Hurricane, the FBI had no information in its holdings indicating that at any time during the campaign, anyone in Trump had been in contact with any Russian intelligence officials." That's anyone in the Trump campaign had been in contact with any Russian intelligence officials. They knew this. And they persisted anyway.
It's too much to handle. You're going to have to read that again because it is so significant. But we have to take a break, so we will be right back after the news.
This is News Radio 1200 WOAI, San Antonio, and iHeartRadio station.
Ukraine says it's hoping to receive American-made F-16 fighter jets by as early as this fall. The Washington Post says an advisor to Kyiv's Ministry of Defense made that statement after the U.S. agreed during the G7 summit to allow its allies to send the aircraft to Ukraine in its fight against Russia. Advisor Yuri Sak on Friday estimated that if decisions are made quickly, F-16s could be flying in Ukrainian airspace by the end of September. Senator Tim Scott is filing to run for president in 2024. The South Carolina Republican is expected to make an official announcement Monday. He launched a presidential exploratory committee last month and joins a growing field of GOP candidates. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is asking potential New Hampshire voters to stay tuned after he stopped by Red Arrow Diner in Manchester Friday. DeSantis uttered those two words as he reportedly is on the verge of announcing a run in next year's presidential election.
like when we brag about good things that we have, we can talk about and say, you know what, I love this. So we want to thank people like Gilbert that is tagging a lot of people, just sharing, saying, you know what, I like this program. I like what they're talking about. I like what they're doing. So they're tagging other people. So thank you for following. Thank you for if you're watching on listening on iHeartRadio. Thank you if you're watching also on Facebook right now, on Twitter, on YouTube. And thank you even more when you share it. Once you watch it and you're like, you know what, I like this program. I want this to continue. And that's the only way we can continue. And that's the only way we can grow is if you watch and you say, yes, I like it by sharing it. So like it, heart it up, and share it. And also you can become a sponsor. Thank you for the people that sponsored already. You can go to sidebartv.com and you'll see all the social media platforms and a way for you to participate and be part of the growth.
Okay, George.
I'm glad, Nico. I need to ask Alex Steimel. He was making a couple of comments that I think are interesting. I know people are saying it. They don't want to say the word, but everybody's thinking it, and that's the word treason. I have a general conspiracy statute. I want to get you to weigh in on this. 18 U.S.C. 371 creates an offense if two or more persons conspire either to commit any offense against the United States or to defraud the United States or any agency thereof in any manner or for any purpose. Now, that seems pretty general. It seems just under that alone, why the hell, and this is what frustrates me, why wouldn't Durham conclude the report with, now, therefore, how shall we live? Now, what shall happen? What are the next steps? What are the consequences? So these guys broke the law, and they did it knowingly.
But if the evidence is there, he doesn't need to say that for somebody to.
Okay, so you're saying that doesn't need to be.
Well, but look at what Comey did. He said no reasonable prosecutor would prosecute her. Says who? I mean, would anybody say no reasonable prosecutor would prosecute Trump for that stuff in Manhattan? Well, someone did. I mean, so when you have evidence, you don't need. When I was in office and when state prosecutors get recommendations from a law enforcement agency, and a prosecution guide is created, and there's a recommendation, hey, we're turning this in for prosecution for X, Y, or Z, whatever statute. But the prosecutor has the discretion on what to do with it, to do something with it, further the investigation, downgrade it, upgrade it, reduce it, or look for deeper, more stuff and prosecute more intently. So, I mean, he didn't need to say it. I mean, I get it. People want to ask him. Someone should ask him. He's going to be called to Congress, I'm sure. Somebody needs to ask him, why didn't you come to a final conclusion? I mean, you said everything other than, well, then if you figured out what I said, then I don't need to come to a conclusion. Maybe you'll say, I don't know. I mean, no one needs his permission if someone's truly going to believes an offense was committed or something like that. So he's just, I think, reporting his findings. I'm not defending him or not. I don't know Durham. I haven't followed his career. It seemed like everybody was supportive of him when he came in, that he was going to be kind of a just someone that's going to get to the truth of things. And then he got to some truth, and certain people don't like it. So I hope that answers your question. I mean, he didn't need to come to a conclusion, and I can't speak for why he didn't.
So you're saying he didn't need to name names in there, although he need to. When you say the word need, no, he doesn't need to. I mean, I don't know why he did not, but that's a question to ask him. I was going to say, because he certainly took the time to mention Peter Strzok in there, and we know look. I'm wondering if this wouldn't be more appropriately seditious conspiracy, and I know there's an 18 U.S.C. statute for that, because this clearly shows intent. You remember, we have emails. They were discussed in Congress. Ted Cruz did a great job actually talking about this in detail between Peter Strzok and his lover, Lisa Page, two special agents. And they're actually talking about how they're going to keep Trump out of office. She actually asked him, he's not going to win, is he? You're not going to.
We won't let that happen.
No, we're going to stop it.
Yeah.
Right. So this is called out. This is deliberate. And then they're talking about Andy. There is no other Andy. It's Andrew McCabe. He's the deputy director of the FBI. And then don't forget John Brennan. This is the former CIA director who's actively involved. This is why I'm saying there's absolutely zero chance, and I shouldn't say zero, the probability that Barack Obama didn't know about this and didn't facilitate it and wasn't okay with it is virtually nil. Now, if you think I'm being conspiratorial, I don't know. Conspiracy theorists are doing pretty well.
It's been working.
I don't know. I think they're
to me, a conspiracy is more of a hunch, a speculation, maybe based off evidence or not. Because to George's point, a lot of conspiracy theorists have been proven correct. So it's always a conspiracy theory until it's true. And so I like to think it's a hypothesis, it's whatever. I mean, because now the word conspiracy, my definition when I grew up, it was always used as like, you're just some nut job that's coming up with, well, who broke into the bank? Well, an alien came in and there's evidence. I saw a light. Well, that's kind of a weird conspiracy. Or two people. I mean, just we misused that term in my humble opinion.
Now it's a truth 2 months before it's time.
Right. Well,
Or in George's case, 2 years before it's time.
I mean, so who knows? Look, I'm an evidence dude, man. I'm never gonna. Lady Justice needs to keep that blindfold on. I am unwavering on that, and I think I proved that when I was in office. There are people that I truly did not like as human beings that I made decisions not to prosecute because the evidence wasn't there, or I believe they were not guilty, even if I didn't like them. And so we got to get away from. When I believe someone I like is wrong, I'm gonna call balls and strikes and say they're wrong or they're right or whatever, and I'll give the reasoning. And I'm happy to be wrong. I'm not perfect, but I'm just saying I'm just an evidence dude. I mean, I want to follow evidence, and that's why when all that stuff about Sidney Powell and the other lawyer, and from day one I said, man, you're
Bring
using
the Kraken.
you wait. The only
So embarrassing now.
well, but back then everybody was all fired
I
up,
know.
and I was irritated. I go, I can't stand that type of talk. I never talked like that as a prosecutor. I don't talk like that as a defense attorney. Just I mean, if you have a point to make and you have the evidence and you're confident you can back it up with objective evidence, not subjective, then okay, then make a bolder statement. That's fine. I'm okay with that. It's part of your strategy on how you're going to handle the case. But I mean, I can't stand that stuff. I'm going to follow the evidence wherever it leads me with the blindfold on. It's not made out of mesh, and one of the eyeballs is not showing. It's both of them are covered, and we've got to get back to that. And I've been advocating that for years now. I said, are you okay with this set of ideas seeping into our justice system? And here we are.
Okay, boys and girls, we're way outside of conspiracy here. I'm reading directly from the report. The Bureau disregarded significant exculpatory information that should have prompted investigative restraint and reexamination. There were clear opportunities to have avoided the mistakes and to have prevented the damage resulting from their embrace of seriously flawed information that failed to analyze and assess properly. No, he doesn't. Then he doesn't say, well, we should indict anybody. True. But here's what he says. How about more training sessions? He says no. He says more training sessions would likely prove to be a fruitless exercise if the FBI's guiding principles of fidelity, bravery, and integrity are not ingrained in the hearts and minds of those sworn to meet the FBI's mission of protecting the American people and upholding the Constitution of the United States. He is implicitly saying, don't bother training. Don't bother. If these convictions of actually upholding fidelity and bravery and protecting the people of the United States, if that's not really part of your ethos, if you don't really believe that, if you don't have a culture that embraces that, don't bother. And so that's why I think you're hearing words about dismantling. That's why you're hearing words about getting down to the rot, tearing it down and starting over. And I understand that those are inflammatory. We don't want to overcorrect, Nico.
Yeah, but if things are, look, when things don't operate in the darkness anymore and it's brought to light, then that's already a check. I mean, so more safe avenues for more people to speak up. We need more information. Because look, we're talking about high-level people here. I deal with everyday folks that are affected by, quote unquote, the system. When you talk about criminal justice reform and different things like that, I mean, so I'm thinking about the community in general. We're talking about people very high up level, presidents, senators, big that trickle down. It truly trickles down to the everyday citizen. But this system affects all of us. I mean, it affects all of us. So I really want this. I want a society that I'm proud that my children and grandchildren will grow up in. I want a system that will function properly, and that if you're doing something appropriate, and we're going to talk about Daniel Penny here in a little while, the veteran, the Marine veteran that has been charged with manslaughter now in New York on a subway. I want a system that you can trust in, that say, I want juries that are not so tribalistic that it doesn't matter who, that the blindfold stays on. It doesn't matter. I want a jury and a system that says, I think you're a piece of it, but you didn't do what you're being accused of. That's what I want. That's my, and maybe I'm an idealist, but if there's any area that someone should be an idealist in, It should be in our justice system.
It
It should
makes-
be in our governmental agencies.
It makes me think of when Trump lost. And was it a few nights before they finally took down the paper that they had put on the windows when they were counting the ballots? And everybody was like, that was for Trump, was saying, "This, what happened? Something weird happened. They shut down the polls, and now all of a sudden, all of the numbers are going up for Biden." And I asked you, Nico, I said, "Oh my God, what just happened? Does the good guy ever win? I mean, doesn't the good guy win in the end?" And you said, "No, the good guy doesn't always win in the end."
Well, I mean,
and
it depends on what you define as a win and what the end is.
well, to me, a win would be somebody does something to help people that stand up and tell the truth not get their clearance taken away, their jobs taken away.
This is a temporary, this is a blip in the full spectrum of what's going to happen in these men's lives. I mean, so Rittenhour, people thought that he didn't win in the end. I look at Israel and I look at the Old Testament, and I believe in a biblical story that's going to happen throughout creation. In the end, I know who wins. I mean, in the end, the true end. I mean, so in the end of my life, when God willing, if I'm 90 years old, and I mean, I define a win differently, and it's how my children conduct themselves and my grandchildren, what legacy and what I've done for this society to make it better. Am I serving heaven on earth? And how am I as a husband and a daddy and a friend and a professional? So that's my definition of wins.
Can he hurry up and come? Please. We have one more segment, and this is Sidebar. We will be right back. Facebook Live?
We are, and we will be. And I want to thank people. People are retweeting our tweet, our Twitter account, and our Twitter video. Anyway, it's weird. Well, thank you for retweeting.
Absolutely. And so we're going to go on Facebook Live after the show,
We
as
are
usual.
on Facebook Live right now, but we can continue the conversation there.
Why do you have to talk like that, Saulo?
No sé, tengo sueño. Hey, Nico, let me ask you a question, because all of this is happening, and I can feel Karen's frustration, and I think a lot of people are watching this. Do we ever get to stop and say, okay, who's calling the shots? You know, who's ordering this? Because we're, okay, this person did this and I saw CNN say this, and everybody's saying, but there's got to be somebody saying, let's do it this way, and this is what's going to do. Who do you think is calling the shots?
Hi, brother. I mean, that's a deep
Yeah,
question.
I'm just-
I don't know. Look, I really don't know, but it's some collection of, it's a mindset. We talk about this globalistic, this one world order movement.
When you say that, let me ask you, you think, I'm just asking you what you think. I know it's not, you could be wrong, but you're saying globalistic. So you think somebody that's calling the shots is not a United States thing?
I don't think it's somebody. I think it's a group of individuals. I don't know. I don't have
a group of
well,
individuals?
look at this. How do you have these movements, these idealistic movements, all happening simultaneously around the world? I mean, it's just this one world order movement. I don't know. I have no idea right now, and I don't want to speak out of turn. I'm just saying that look at Adidas. I mean, Adidas just did something now. I mean, we're just seeing this snowball effect of ideas that are not truly the foundation of this country, whether it's parental right issues, whether it's life, whether it's truth, whether it's, communism versus capitalism, and capitalism is being demonized these days, and communism somehow is being taught to our kids, or at least, trickled down to our kids as something that's reasonable and good. And then people that truly have lived through communism, like George's parents and other people that I know and people that have truly studied it, I was like, you guys got it wrong. What the hell are you talking about? Why do you think these people from Venezuela and Florida and Cuba that are over there are so adamant and why they supported DeSantis so much and why they vote a certain way. They vote mainly conservative. What are they trying to conserve? What are they trying to hold together? Freedom.
Yeah.
Their autonomy as human beings, because they know this is not this is not theory to them. We're like, it sounds great on theory. No, it sucks in reality. And I don't think it sounds great in theory, but I guess I can see how someone can make it sound good. It sucks in reality. And so I don't know, brother. I don't know yet. I'll wait for the evidence to continue.
Nico is always much more self-controlled and restrained than I am. I take the things that he said at face value because he said a lot of truth in there, and then I combine them into what I think is a coordinated effort. I absolutely do believe, no, this is not just America. I think there is a worldwide effort an authoritarian effort here to control individuals. This is an overthrow of the American constitutional order in this country as a result of that. If you're waiting for a coup to happen, it's too late. The train's left the station. We've already had a coup. We've had an overturning, an illegitimate, largely unsupported. I mean, there are just crazy people on the left here, but largely unsupported by the American populace. This is not, Americans aren't on board with this crap. But we've had an overturning of the American constitutional order. We've had a coup that has been led by the Department of Justice and the FBI against a duly elected president for 4 years. The evidence is out. We're not sitting here speculating.
Yeah.
This has happened. And I'm telling you right now, with the individuals in charge, not a damn thing is going to happen to them. Okay, let me be clear about that. In the immediate short term, not a damn thing is going to happen to these people. It isn't. Aristotle didn't talk in terms of totalitarianism because I don't even think the word was around. It wasn't around. It really became kind of a 20th century phenomenon with 20th century totalitarian novels. Chief among them, 1984 by George Orwell. I think C.S. Lewis's That Hideous Strength is also phenomenal and should be read. But that's really a 20th century concept. Aristotle talked in terms of tyranny. That's as far as he went. So what we have here is tyranny on steroids. We have totalitarianism and mass authoritarianism. And we have American politicians that are working with guys like, and Mark Faz brought it up here in a comment, Klaus Schwab, that's absolutely right, who heads the World Economic Forum. We've talked about that in here as well. If you listen to the language, you got to take these people at face value. You can't keep saying, surely this isn't true. No, it is true. There's an absolute effort here, and it's countrywide, it's global, and it's deliberate to minimize, as Dennis Prager says so well, to minimize, to erase the citizen and maximize central power in the hands of a few. Capitalism is confined only to them. This is why they use stakeholder language versus what we've used forever in capitalistic language, shareholder. The shareholder is invisible now. It's becoming stakeholder. If you happen to be a stakeholder, and this is what's going on with Adidas. This is what's going on with Nike. This is what's going on with Target. That's what that's about. They want to be stakeholders. They want to be among those
They want to be
few.
at the table.
That's right. Well said. They want to be at the table. That's the issue here. I want to get on the winning side. They've read the cards and they've said, this is where power's going. This is where Christopher Wray is going to be. This is where John Brennan is, right? And Biden, even though he's completely out of control in terms of his faculties, he's a wonderful pawn right now. He's a useful idiot, and it's working very effectively, right? He's grandfatherly, but he's corrupt as hell. But he's grandfatherly, makes me feel good. So surely he couldn't possibly be involved. See, it's very manipulative. And so they're amassing and centralizing and building power.
I mean, think
That's
about
what's happening here.
Did you see that clip that I sent you about the Good Morning America show? So Michael Strahan, I've lost all respect for that guy. Because he's got to get on the train.
Yep.
If he wants his quote-unquote job instead of standing up. That's why, again, that's why I respect people like Bill Maher and Andrew Schultz or anybody or Joe Rogan who uses their platform to speak truth and to not go along to get along. I mean, they had a Good Morning America, Karen. I don't know if I sent it to you.
You sent it to me, and it's just
I mean, they're celebrating a 13-year-old boy, a drag.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the youngest, and I mean, what are we talking about? I mean, this child cannot make a decision on going to school. Or he's truant, cannot make a decision about smoking, cannot drive, cannot live by himself, cannot make any decision, cannot even get on a plane, can't rent an apartment, can't do anything, but he can make a decision on his gender and it'd be celebrated. Celebrated. If that same child came out as an animal and said, I want to sleep in the kitty box or whatever, no one would think that's okay. And that's not being mean. I mean, that's just and the vast majority of people understand this. And here's the test. Hey, Michael Strahan, do you want your child to be influenced to be confused this way? Is that what you want? Do you want your 11, 12, 13-year-old to? Well, no, not mine, but somebody else's. Well, then you're a hypocrite. And I'm not going to celebrate something that doesn't make sense. I mean, first of all, I answer to God first. Number two, what I believe is legal and what is lawful and what our society has agreed are the bedrock of understanding here. And biology is one of them. Now, when that child, that 13-year-old, becomes 18 or an adult, man, that's your choice. I believe in freedom. I truly. So think about this, what George is saying. We want to erase the individual unless we want to use the individual for the bigger stakeholder objective. So what happened, I mean, so they're erasing the individual, but now they're saying, hey, at 12, 13, 11, 10, 8, you can decide these type of things, but yet the parent can't do anything about it. It's logically inconsistent. Forget about political platform. This has nothing to do with political parties. In theory. I mean, I understand who's advocating what, and that's we can't avoid that.
Well said. If you're waiting for the GOP to save you, you're wasting your time. If you're waiting for Mitch McConnell to one day wake up and use his position in the Senate to go against this, you're out of your mind. Mitch McConnell is enabling this crap. He benefits from it. That's the point. If somebody is silent during times of obvious outrage like this, and they're in a position to actually be saying something and doing something about it, and they're silent, they're benefiting from it. That's the point here. Show me a behavior, and I'll show you a reward system. Yeah. And this is where we are right now. So how do we move forward from this? Okay, first of all, enough with the mass electoral fraud. Be very surgical with the terms here. Fraud was largely confined to swing states. I'm just going forward here, Nico, into 2024. Because, okay, people are asking, Salo just asked, you're wondering, where do we go? And I don't claim they have the answers here, but I'm just using basic critical thinking. The attention's going to come right back down to those swing states. Look what happened in 2020 elections. Really almost, and then what happened in 22. And we're going to see the same thing happen in 2024. We ought to be focusing on those swing states because where we have fraud, Nico, is typically where the numbers are close, right? And that's by definition a swing state. You're going to see numbers being close again. We ought to be focusing like hell on those swing states to make sure those gaps broaden legitimately. And then there's the question of state laws concerning elections. The Democrats are brilliant. I just want to say they want victory more than we do. That's the point. They want it more than we do right now, Nico. They had teams of lawyers on the ground 8, 9, 10 months, a year before the 2020 elections. They were already leveraging the COVID narrative. They were way ahead of us. What do? We send out Sidney Powell, like you said, and Lynn Wood a month after the election. A day late and a lot more than $1 short. We got to be proactive. We ought to have legal teams. We ought to have a concerted legal effort on the ground, working this stuff.
But here's the deal.
Proactively.
It shouldn't be about we and them. It should be about us trying to make sure that our elections are legitimate. Where the Democrat can say, hey, you know what? Fair enough, we lost. The Republicans say, hey, fair enough, the people have spoken. Now, what do I need to do to persuade people to think about and vote for my ideas over the other person's ideas? Everybody should be worried about that because, I mean, Democrats, Stacey Abrams, Hillary Clinton, they claim election fraud all the time. I mean, against Bush, Gore did the same thing.
Sure. This
is nothing new. I mean, but the narrative is being spun. I am a fierce, objective evaluator. I just am. I have to be. Maybe it's the way I trained in my profession, what I do. I mean, I really have to distance my emotions. Passion's good, emotion's bad, in my opinion, and when you're making critical decisions. And then evaluate a system. We got to have an electoral system. And Democrats and Republicans both should be on board with this. And then say, hey, whoever wins fair and square. If my ideas win, and then so be it. If your ideas suck, then I'm going to take it and vice versa. That's what we should be focused on. It shouldn't be about us versus them. It shouldn't be. I'm just telling you that. I mean, so we'll see. I mean, I know this conversation can keep on going. And I really wanted to analyze on radio the Daniel Penny situation because that's where people really feel I think they feel less confident in our justice system when people can use the reasonable use of force. At least that's the claim.
Explain who Daniel Penny is.
He's because we're going to talk about this on the after show. So those who are listening and they want to finish this conversation, we'll be talking about the veteran, the Marine veteran who was on a subway in New York. And this individual, Mr. Neely, who was mentally ill and really needed help, and he's a victim of the system, to be honest with you, and we'll talk about that on the after show. And he's making the witnesses are saying threats, and I need food, I need this, and I don't give an F, or I don't care if I die, and I don't care if I spend my life in prison. What does that mean? What do you spend life in prison for? I guess murder. And then this Marine veteran and 2 other people, by the way, took him down. He had him in a rear naked choke. It's a jiu-jitsu move. And then for 3 minutes, he eventually passed away, and it was ruled a homicide, which means that some individual killed another individual. It doesn't mean it's murder per se. So we'll analyze that. And then he was charged with manslaughter. So we'll talk about that, guys. Thanks for joining us this week. I hope you enjoyed it. Share it with people you think might enjoy this, and have a very blessed week.
Do I need to turn on the microphones? Good question.
Yes, can you hear it? Is it okay? Okay, so
yeah.
we're gonna start
First of all, I
talking
want
about.
to acknowledge
Yes,
some people.
please.
Alex
please.
Daniels, he says, I will see you on Facebook. Thank you, Ray. Annette, thank you for sharing. Lee, thank you for sharing. James, thank you for sharing. Thank you for all the followers we're getting on Twitter. Thank you very much. It's going to be a different playing field now that it's under Elon Musk and things are changing and what they're doing and what they're planning. So I think it's a safe space for
today.
For today. It's a safe space. So thank you for following us on Twitter.
Okay, so we're talking about Perry.
Yeah, Daniel Perry. I mean, look, this guy, look, there's so much, it's deep here. I just think that this was, talk about a rush to judgment. I mean, I've been involved, I've investigated, looked at, defended, and prosecuted or evaluated a lot of officer-involved shootings. And there's no rush to judgment. You don't have to do anything right away. I mean, not that this guy was an officer, but what I'm saying is he's not a threat to anybody. I mean, he wasn't there. He didn't walk into a restaurant and just,
But
attack
it was
people.
in New York.
They're in a
Haven't we
tube.
seen this already?
So they're in a tube. Think about this. You're in a tube, and there's horrific stories. I don't know if you saw. I think she's Puerto Rican or I'm not sure. This lady lost her eye. Have you seen that video?
yeah.
It is a brutal video on the subway. This guy, I mean, brutally beats this woman. This is not
I mean, domestic violence is evil, but this is different. I mean, he's slamming her, kicking her, and she loses an eye. She does an interview. I think she did one of the Fox shows or whatever. I just saw the clip of her interview, and she's missing an eye. She got beat so badly. And there's hundreds of stories of what happens on these subways in New York. So people are on alert. I mean, and you're in a tube.
It's not like you can
have
escape.
a marshal. It's you have like a subway
Right.
marshal on there that everybody's watching.
Yeah.
You're not getting away. Call 911. Great. And then what?
At the next stop, we'll be there.
Have you seen videos of people
Yeah.
being stabbed and hit and
Yeah.
punched and kicked? I mean, you can get bludgeoned to death. And this guy that beat up that woman, she lost her eye. He didn't use a weapon. He used his feet and he used his arms. So this guy, Mr. McNeely, who unfortunately, and it is tragic that he passed away. He has 40-something arrests, which are really irrelevant. I mean, people want to, this is why I really try to temper people down. So he had 44 arrests for this or that. It's irrelevant. I mean, so Mr. Penny didn't know that at the time, neither did the other passengers. That's irrelevant. What's relevant and what was for Texas? What's the reasonable belief of apparent danger and was it imminent, immediate? And what were they facing at the time? So here's this guy. He's very belligerent, so to speak. He's yelling. He's telling people he
Clear
wants
threats.
food. Oh, but he threatens me. I don't give an F, or I don't care. I don't care if I die. I don't care if I go to prison for life or go to jail for life. What are you saying? I mean, Mr. Penny's attorney was making the argument that, well, what do you go to prison for life for? Murder. People clearly understood that this guy was prepared to be violent and take it to the extremest of levels.
That's right.
People were scared. There was women there was people, and these idiots that try to make it about ethnicity. I can't stand that shit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so immoral for them to do that. I mean, think about what you're doing. You're making it into something that it's not. And so, I mean, there's a woman that happened to be black was there saying this guy's a hero. I mean, I was scared. We knew exactly.
wasn't the
what
only
this guy-
one, you're right.
Oh yeah, she's
Yeah,
not the only
yeah.
one. There's a lot of people. They went out of their way to go down to the precinct to give statements. And then there's two other people that are helping him hold the guy's arms and saying anyone calling 911 under the law of parties, they haven't been charged. One of them was a guy that looked a little brown to me. I mean, and so there's a lot here. So, what is the reasonable amount of force to subdue this dude, the deceased, Mr. Neely? He's flailing still. They don't know what's in his waistband. What did he have any weapons? He was still pushing back. From what I saw, McNeely, Penny had him in a rear naked choke, and so he turned over sideways to give him some breathing air. That's what it looks like to me. And he, from my understanding, reports from what I heard, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, is that he was breathing when he finally fully let him go. And then he passed. So I want to know his toxicology.
Okay,
agree.
yeah, that's
there's
what
a lot.
agree.
There's so much.
That's
here
what
that
I
needs
want to know. So,
Yeah.
So a tox report, right? I mean, you just said it. I think would ordinarily be necessary before declaring a cause of death. Where is it?
Well,
And so
it takes a while, right? But when will it even matter by the time it comes out?
So I want to know. I'd like to know where's the ME? Where's the medical examiner on this? And who is the medical examiner? And how does a medical examiner get a medical examiner's job at a city? Oh, let's see. What happened in New York? Let's see. So this is an appointee of a Democrat mayor in New York. So the chances right there, the chances of justice are virtually nil. And that's where we are. And Nico said, you almost hate talking about us versus them. But this is the whole idea of two-tier justice, which we've been talking about now for years. It's not a conspiracy. It's reality. And under this political order, you're going to see more and more and more of this. And Nico and I were talking offline about how this ties right in with what we were talking about on the radio in the first half, because this truly is an assault on self-defense now. This is a front porch issue. It's reached the grassroots where the most fundamental constitutionally protected right, really, which is really what's all about, the Second Amendment, is self-defense, is it's in the crosshairs, no pun intended. So where's the tox report? He declared a chokehold basically as the reason for the homicide. That's the declaration. And that's in the aftermath of a bunch of street protests demanding that Daniel Penny be prosecuted. So that's how we're going to do justice from now on. That's what these people want.
But to take it further, so you have people standing in the way of subway trains, but yet and nothing happens to them. Nothing happens to them, but yet people can't stand outside of abortion clinics praying, and things happen
That's
to them.
exactly right.
I mean, this
Exactly
is
right.
So I understand what George is saying. Don't get me wrong, but the caution of us versus them versus trying to stand up for truth and then bringing and having people jump on time the truth train is how do you win the us versus them? Somebody has to destroy the other side. That's the problem.
That's right.
That's the ultimate problem. I mean, is that what we really want? Of course not. That's what I.
Well, hold up.
Really
I want to destroy this ideology. I want to be very clear about that.
I got that. I understand that.
So,
but
I want to
who's
silence.
pushing the ideology?
But I understand.
People.
So
I mean, this is my point.
I understand that. It's going to be a distinction without a difference. I'm not suggesting anywhere near any kind of physical harm to people here. But this ideology needs to be crushed.
I agree
We
with that.
absolutely, and we need to want it more than, you don't think they want to crush our ideology? You don't think they've declared war on America as
But
founded?
it's not even our ideology. It's the ideology. Biology is not our ideology. This is what I don't want to fall for the trap. Biology is not our ideology. Parental control over your child is not our ideology. I mean, common sense stuff is not our ideology. A child not making decisions for themselves is not our ideology. It's the ideology. I'm trying to make an appeal for objective truth, and then everybody jump on that train. That's all I'm saying.
No, I understand, but ultimately, this is objective truth, and I get it. I know what you're saying, but I don't. But what I'm worried about is we now have to hyper define everything. We can't just. So if I adopt the ideology, I'm adopting it. It's my ideology because I'm taking ownership of it. So if I have to qualify everything, then this conversation is going to go from 30 seconds to 30 hours. And so all I'm saying is it's got to be practical, Nico. When you say the ideology and somebody says, well, you made it up. No, let me tell you why I didn't make it up. It's objectively grounded on evidence. Fair enough. But I mean, do I have to qualify that every time?
Maybe today you do. I mean, I guess today you do. I mean,
But when the media is reporting on one side and they get the public to get the side that they want, and that's all they report on, it's pretty hard to go against that.
We've got to find ways for this to be illuminated, to bring on the Joe Rogans, to get the Brussels Rands, to get the Bill Maher's to speak out more, to get back to this homeostasis of where we agree on the truth.
Yeah, but didn't y'all just try to do that? And you got banned.
Well, and what?
I
and
know.
So what? I mean, so what does that mean?
How many times are they going to do that to everyone?
I think that is important. What Nico's saying, you got to go back to the ideals of the country.
Yes,
of those ideals that forged this country, the Judeo-Christian ethic that basically forged not just America's constitutional order or America's common law, but really shaped our institutions from the ground up. You got to demand that, and you got to demand it by exercising it. You really do. And we just don't do that enough today, and we have to keep
Smokey
going back.
Robinson, I sent this video out. He says, I don't want to be referred to as African American. I want to be referred to as American American because my ancestors, my family were part of the American story. I loved his video. I wish he goes, and I've always said this, I'm not a Lebanese Mexican American. I'm an American of Lebanese Mexican descent. There's a difference. Well, I'm a follower of Christ first. I'm a husband, daddy American of Mexican Lebanese descent who happens to practice law. That's the order. I mean, that's my quote unquote identity. And we got to get back to that. That's our point. I mean, those are the ideals. I mean, and then that's why when George and I got into our discussion about Frank Rodriguez, I mean, he says the only flag that should be in, and this is a guy that is he's in the LGBT community, but he hates the whole indoctrination of children from transgender. He goes, the only flag that should be in a school is the American flag. Because the American flag represents what I've been trying to advocate, which is rights or whatever. And I love that. That's a bedrock of agreement. Now, the nuances in this, and we can have the theological debates and the ideological debates on that, but we've got to come back to a homeostasis, a foundation of what this country is built on.
But in order to get back there, you've got to fight fire with fire.
I agree.
I mean,
I'm not
you've got
disagreeing
Alvin Bragg, who now, I mean, I don't think there's any question this guy's a political indictment of Trump over non-crimes, and he's done the same thing here with this guy. So
I'm not even prepared to say that. I'm not prepared to say that yet.
Prepared to what?
This is not a crime yet. I'm leaning heavily towards that. I'm not prepared to say that yet. I'm just saying. But
do you think that this is legitimately manslaughter?
I don't know yet. I think it leans heavily against it. I don't think it should have been indicted this quickly at all. I'm just trying to be objective. That's all. I'm just trying to be
but
objective.
I was saying,
I don't know everything
I was
yet.
talking about Trump, non-crimes. And so this guy has, I think, rushed to judgment, as you said.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
To indict this guy for manslaughter.
Yes.
That's
It's
all
a
we're
rush
saying.
to judgment.
So we now have Bragg, and we know how he operates. We got an ME that didn't even await the results of the Tox report. Still would like to see it. This isn't medical science guiding this. It's politics. And that's what we're saying, Nico. I don't know how we have a side that is hell bent on crushing anyone who wants to fight for traditional America. These guys, I'm just saying, they want victory more than people on our side who want traditional America back. I want my country back. I just want my country back, where Democrats and Republicans have an equal footing at the table.
100%.
An equal place at the
100%.
table. That's all I want.
I mean, Karen, remember the days where the Democrats said, hey, you know what? We disagree on X, Y, and Z, but this Republican is the one for the job. And vice versa. Republicans for this Democrat. I mean, when I ran for office the first time, I had two groups like that, you know, and then vice versa on the other side. I mean, because we agree on so much, we disagree on so little. And I told you about that old Republican friend of mine. He was actually older in age, but he was, an old school dude. And he said, Nico, you know, and I'll say it again because I don't know who's heard this, but, you know, in the old days, man, you know, us Republicans, we started at the this is back when I was running under the Democrat platform. Us Republicans, you know, started on the 40-yard line, using the football field analogy. And the Democrats started on their 40-yard line. And we were really just arguing over the 20 yards in the middle. Today, I'm on my field, my goal line, and they're on their goal line. We don't agree on shit. And I added the part about tribalistic. It's become tribalistic. My tribe is never wrong. Your tribe is always wrong. That is not America. There's no way we can't. And that's what I'm trying to go. I'm trying to resist that. I'm not saying maybe it's there, maybe it's not. I'm trying to resist that because the only way to win is for one side to be destroyed. And that I want people to come back to logic, and I think you're seeing that.
We're talking about different things, though. I just want to be surgical about it because I know you always want to clarify terms.
Yeah, please.
So there's Democrats and Republicans, right? And we know what that means traditionally. I want to be. We don't have that today.
I don't disagree.
Okay, right. So we need to crush socialism, Marxism. That absolutely has to be crushed.
I agree with that.
And I think we should do everything that it takes. I do, politically speaking here. It's a political expression because we still have, thank God, we still have those political alternatives available to us. This war hasn't gone hot. Praise the Lord for that. And so we ought to do everything possible. What I'm saying is we're not doing everything possible. Like again, focusing on swing states going forward, really focusing on putting a lot of money into swing states, into getting out the vote in swing states and making sure there's a substantial gap, electoral gap in those swing states, number one. Number two, making sure we have an army of lawyers, well-funded legal teams, not some dude who graduated from law school, but a bunch of them, and a bunch of really good ones who are looking for any kind of deviation from the law, for any kind of really, because all politics is local, as are elections, any kind of sort of malfeasance or any kind, again, deviation from the law in any way, manipulation of protocols locally. I mean, there ought to be lawyers watching this and bringing lawsuits and being proactive. We ought to be doing that.
But George,
we're not doing that.
I lived in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, for like almost 10 years, and I think that's one of the states that you're probably talking about, Pennsylvania, that we need to watch.
Yeah.
And I was there and it was crooked. And I left 10 years later and it was still crooked,
well, I'm
more
from
crooked.
Pennsylvania. Yep.
Pennsylvania. So or Arizona, let's just say, how do we watch those states when they've always been that way? They've always operated that way.
We're not watching them. That's
okay,
that's the point I'm trying to make. We don't have, and I hope it's different now. I really pray it's different. Trump seems to be talking, Nico, like he's aware that that's what we need to do, be more proactive. But if you go back to 2020, we had no one on the ground.
But why? Why?
That's my point. This is my point. You got to want victory more than the other side. This isn't about Republicans and Democrats anymore. This is a malignant, destructive,
But most people don't
anti-American
know that, George.
ideology.
That's the problem. When you made your appeal that it's not about Republican, Democrat anymore, and it's not like the old days, there's still a lot of Democrats in the party, I assure you, 100%, not 90, 100%, that still think of the old way of doing it, but they're not paying attention, so they're just voting, I mean ignorantly, respectfully, just meaning not knowing what's really going on and really seeing it, and they've just been thought that I have to vote Democrat. And then that's why when people say we got to get away from this, and it's happening a lot in the black communities, and it's supposed to Mexican communities, not Mexican American, Mexican communities, and ethnicities. We got to start doing that. We got to start pushing ideas. And when you label the idea, people get defensive. When you talk about an idea, people are open-minded. That's why I try to engage in the arena of ideas, because you can label any idea. When I reason with people to truth, and I just talk about ideas without making it a Judeo-Christian one, a biblical one, a Republican one, a conservative one, just an idea. They're like, yeah. I go, well, how would you classify that idea? Well, it's just an idea. Well, how does it sound? Today sounds like this, and and then all of a sudden you see them get a little bit more defensive. So I mean, we've got to be strategic on how to bring people over. That's why I was so supportive of it. Even if somebody is advocating an LGBT movement, but yet will say, hey, but wait a minute, but I am not advocating drag queen shows with kids. I am not advocating, indoctrination of children. I am not advocating over-sexualizing children. I am not advocating this. Then I'm going to say we're agreeing on that, and I'm going to run with you on that. Let's go back to disagreeing on this other portion later. That's my level of
I've been
of
seeing
strategy.
more members of the LGBTQ community get on Facebook. Not Facebook. I don't really go on Facebook, but Instagram. And there's this one woman, and her name is like Magay. Instead of MAGA, it's Magay, and she constantly talks just like Rodriguez about why is this community not waking up to what's really happening. And so I think there is more and more of that LGBTQ community that is opening their eyes, but
Ideas
I don't
have consequences, Karen, and I tell people that all the time. I believe in a big individual. George and I do, you do. I know Stalo and Dom, we all do, but I believe in a big individual. I mean, really, the classical liberal is a Republican today, is a conservative today. The classical liberal of say what you want. I'm going to defend. I'm going to say what I want. Don't tell me what to say or do. But I'm going to protect you to say what you want, even if I disagree with you. And hey, government, you suck. Slow down. Get away from me. Don't tell me what to do. Corporations, who the hell are you? I mean, think about that, how the roles have reversed. Oh, the working man, the working woman, help them get up there. Now it's the other way around.
Yeah.
The elitist, now it's like this elitist Democrat party.
Absolutely.
I mean, think about that. So that's why I never got caught up on labels. I'll never forget when I was running for office the first time, I was at the Christian Chamber of Commerce, and I was under the Democrat platform. And so I said, he says, I'm listening to your ideas. I mean, he didn't say ideas like that. I'm listening to you talk and what you're advocating. Why are you a Democrat again? and then this was back before the party. This was back in 2009 or 10. This is back before the party completely went left. I mean, full-blown leftist and progressive or whatever, socialist. But I just said, look, I'm not going to follow a label. I mean, Kennedy would be a Republican today, right? But there's a set of ideas. I'm going to be who I am. I'm going to advocate the ideas I'm going to advocate, and then let the chips fall where they may. If the labels change, they're going to change. Let them change. I'm going to look for the platform that is going to help me advocate my set of ideas that I believe will bless them the best amount of
Yeah, a
people.
totally unpopular message. True, but unpopular because the party's not going to get behind that. That's the point. It's like, you need to do our bidding, otherwise we're not going to put money behind your campaign. I knew you didn't care about that because ultimately,
I didn't care about
you pursue the course that you feel is the right thing to do, and I think more people need to do that. But again, we just have a courage deficit today, so that's going to be, if you're expecting politicians to do that, with very few exceptions, you're not. Nico and I were talking offline this week, and we were talking about, okay, where does this go? Because you see Jim Jordan out there, politicians that we can say, man, these guys are really courageous. Devin Nunes, Jim Jordan. God bless Josh Hawley. He's been fantastic, particularly on the trans issue. He's been amazing. Marco Rubio has been saying some really great things and really pushing pretty hard. But you got to wonder at some point if this continues, because this is really we were talking an assault on self-defense, the criminalization of self-defense. Really, this is really where this is going.
I mean, look, the Rittenhouse case was clear to me.
Yeah.
From the beginning.
And I think these people become scapegoats, and they become platforms for a message. This is a warning to the average American. It is. So now they've gone on after Trump. Now so this is really one giant asshole sandwich. I mean, they've gone after Trump. Now they're going after the sort of everyday American. And in between, you have these duly elected representatives. And I was just chatting with Nico earlier, I think it was on Thursday night. I was saying, what do you think is going to happen to congressmen at some point? You think it's impossible to see a Jim Jordan arrested? You think it's out of the question for a Marco Rubio to be arrested? You don't think that's where we're heading? It's time we do some 20th century good old fashioned socialist, Marxist, communist analysis and look at regimes that have toppled their order and look at what happened to any kind of political dissident in the aftermath. Go back to 1959 Havana and look at the order before Castro came into power by force and after. You think they just sort of took the levers of power and said, let bygones be bygones, we're now in power? Yeah, right. This was the beginning, not the end. You're going to see an effort, if people don't speak up and if you don't literally practice and live by and believe the rights that are in the Bill of Rights. And this is how you defeat it. You don't allow yourself to be censored. You think us being booted from Instagram is going to shut us up? Then you obviously don't know us. We believe, Nico, we believe those ideals of the American Constitution. We know that our founders died for them because they so believe them that they were God ingrained. They're our right. If you are shut up, you're going to be erased as a person. That cannot happen. And so you want this to be preserved, then you speak up. Then you start with your family. You start in your neighborhood. You start with your neighbor. You find opportunities. I love what you said a couple of months ago about the idea of looking for an opportunity to leverage your backyard, opening it up, and maybe talk to your kids and invite friends over. Find opportunities to talk to them about the truth and explain to them what's really going on, and to help people fall in love with this amazing country. Really, if the American ideals are pushed, I'm an optimist. America's fundamentally optimistic. There's a future, and it's a great future. Every individual having an opportunity to become who God created them to be. This is a wonderful future.
What is the American dream?
If we continue to come back to the American Constitution. What is the American dream?
What is the American dream, Karen?
I don't know, but I keep on thinking that there are many more soon-to-be Americans that have crossed over the border, and you talk about having a slew of attorneys.
I just don't know
What
how you
happens
can't think
when-
this is not deliberate.
Right. What happens when they become voters, and you know they will become voters? I mean, I totally get what you're saying, but I think that
Yeah.
there's always like
Yes.
a monkey wrench thrown into great ideas about America.
Yes. Yeah. Can I make a recommendation? I think it's the best article out there. In fact, this should be taught. Seriously, you guys got to read this article. It's an article by Mark Lewis. He writes a few for townhall.com. I really like this guy. Man, he's just has great insights. It's called, "What Are All These Illegals Going to Do?" It's kind of a "Now How Shall We Live" article. And he talks about where this is going to go. And it's quite brilliant. And so he says, hey, pick crops. Some illegals will sell drugs, menial jobs, welfare, homelessness, crime, because very few of the illegals are skilled workers. And then he says, point number 4, these people are a revolution waiting to happen. The illegals are going to discover that Joe Biden's America is not what it was advertised to be. Most of them will exist in squalor and deep poverty with no easy avenue of escape. Many children will end up in some kind of child labor or maybe even sex slavery to help their family subsist. It is a horrible situation that Biden is creating. Nico's point is, I just can't see how anybody could see this is not deliberate. Many of these people left their countries to get away from this, but they will find a concomitant situation in the United States. If we think that a revolution cannot happen in America, then we are only deluding ourselves.
I mean, the thought that we can't stop the illegal immigration. I mean, so if you can't stop illegal immigrants that don't have any weapons or strategy or tactics, then what do you do with the army? What do you do with China? What do you do with whatever other country that wants to just do that? I mean, I guarantee you we would stop it. So we can stop it. So that's why I'm saying, I'm objectively just looking at this logically. I'm critically thinking, this is deliberate. How is it not deliberate when you know that you can stop this? So it's one of those things. But to George's point earlier, you have the Durham report, you have the whistleblowers, you have what happened in New York, this almost criminalization of self-defense. It appears that way. And the only reason why I say I'm not prepared to say that yet is because I have to be consistent. I haven't seen all the evidence. That's why I'm saying that. That's why I say it heavily leans towards an appropriate use of force from what I've seen and the advocacy points. But it's absolutely a rush to judgment. There's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way you can get there. And if you release the chokehold and the person's still breathing, I mean, I'm curious what I haven't seen the ME's report, but I think it's indicative. I mean, Mr. Penny, Daniel Penny, has raised over $2 million. $2 million.
Wow, I had no idea.
No, that's a big difference. 2.5 it was 1.8 2 days ago.
Let me check. But
Check really
I think
quick.
it's 2.5. I'll check.
If it's 2.5, that's insane. That's 500,000 in a couple of days.
I see where you're coming from, Nico, but I also, if that incident with that bodega owner hadn't happened, I would say, okay, this is just something else. But it seems so similar that they rushed
You're right.
to indict
But
or
then
whatever.
they dismissed.
So what's
Interesting.
the point?
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, but this is my point. That you don't want that. Just take your time. No one's leaving anywhere. You do your investigation, conduct it properly, thoroughly, objectively, and then make your decision based off facts and evidence. I mean, and that's someone that had a knife. The bodega owner had a knife.
Yes.
I mean, this is very similar. And then what do you do with the other two people? There's the grumblings that they're trying to find those other two men they were holding the arms, trying to hold his arms. but we've lost sight of Neely fell through the cracks.
Yeah.
The systems is broken. You talk about a broken
Absolutely.
system. This guy is mentally ill. I mean, he needed help, but he's a vagrant. He's out on his own. People will say, "Oh, we can't hold the mentally ill responsible because we're being cruel. So let them do whatever the hell they want to do."
Unless they get a gun
cruel.
in their hand.
Yeah, well,
and then suddenly.
Sometimes.
You're right.
There are 100,000 deaths every year from people who are intoxicated with some sort of illegal drug. I mean, that's twice the number of gun-related homicides, at least. So the idea that some of those individuals, like Mr. Neely, that medical report would be sort of inconsequential here is nuts. I think but it was blown off. It's unfortunate. It's 2.5 million, by the way. Getting back to the other point,
It is 2.5
as of
million.
May 17th, it's 2.5 million.
That's incredible.
From 50,000 donors
Okay, but let me tell you this. But then check
for his legal defense.
check what Neely's fund has raised, like 100,000. I mean, if that's not this,
Yeah,
and I've
of
had
where people are. On
yeah,
this,
and
for
I
sure.
saw one commentator who is leans very left. They just said, "Look, I know they're trying to make this a George Floyd situation. It's just not." I mean, and especially in New Yorkers know what they deal with there in those subways and what's going on. It's just not. This seems to be this for sure is a rush to judgment. It seems to be a travesty of justice on both, in the sense of for Neely for the system not helping him, and then for Mr. Penny going through this crap.
I hate that people, use their phones to record everything, but it really has made a difference
Man, it
in
helps.
actually seeing what happened versus your word against my word. I mean, it's good and bad, but can you imagine?
Wanted to say thanks to James Van Cleve and to Sid Burns. I think they're making, happen to have the benefit of looking straight on at these comments, Nico, but making some very important points. It's true, James. I do have that book. I've read it. I've talked about it. Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. Yeah, that's right. And it even precedes Saul Alinsky. I mean, this stuff is pointed out in The Naked Communist, which was, you got to go back. H. Cleon Skousen, who was a former CIA operative, and wrote just a fantastic book. And he had lots of experience with communistic governments, called The Naked Communist from 1958. There's been a bunch of reprints, and he goes through the protocol. And this is what you always bring up here from the 1984 interview, right? The name escapes me right now.
Yuri Bezmenov.
I'm usually asking me who it is, but Yuri Bezmenov's interview in 1984. There's a clear protocol here, and it's been implemented in the United States, and it continues to be implemented here to overthrow the American constitutional order. And Sid Burns, I can't see the full comment, guys, but it should be. We should see it because he says he's asking the question. He's asking the question, and we cut him off there. The screen cuts him off. But he's basically saying, I get speaking up, standing up for what's right. I have. I won't tell you how it's destroyed my life. Look at the FBI whistleblowers. They did the right thing and had their clearances stripped. Were labeled seditionists. They're homeless and bankrupted. WTF do we do? And then I can't see the rest of your comment. I'm sorry. I'd like to see what that question says. Is there any way we could see that?
No, it's not. I think that was it. I think that was it.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
Okay, so he
It's a comment.
stops there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we mentioned two things that I think are actually practical and will help a lot as we prepare for the 2024 election. There are a couple legal institutions out there we've recommended before on the show, Karen. I'd like to do it again.
Please, please.
The American Center for Law and Justice, run by Jay Sekulow, is fantastic. They're well funded. They need more funding. The Alliance Defending Freedom is absolutely fantastic and should be funded. I think there's a Pacific Justice Institute, PJI. I think it's Matt Dacus that runs that. They do a lot of work on the West Coast. We don't have any problems on the West Coast, do we?
Right.
They should be well funded as well. Please look into those institutions and look at getting it behind them. But the Thomas More Society is fantastic, although they tend to focus a lot on First Amendment issues, particularly in employment law. Maybe I'm narrowing them down a little too much in their scope. But give to these organizations and give heartily to those organizations. I certainly would, and I certainly do. Please consider that. Okay.
George, I at first when the whole Dylan Mulvaney ad for Bud Light came out, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool that everybody's joining together and saying we're not going to buy Bud Light because you did this. Then it grew to, women are being erased. I get that. But the thing that I think that it did the most was show us that we're not alone and we're not a minority. We just don't have loud screaming voices like some of the smaller groups do. But even with that said, I love, and I hope you can repeat it, to once again tell everybody why these big companies keep doing things like this.
Yeah.
I mean, that was so significant
It
during the show.
sounds unbelievable, doesn't it?
It does, but it makes so much sense.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's the stakeholder capitalism model. I think that's what's going on. It's not just them. We've seen. I mean, you'd think, how could it get any worse for Bud Light?
It can't.
How could it get any worse for Bud Light? They've lost.
What happened now?
They've lost tons
I
of
hope it
market,
does. I hope they
tons
shut
of
down.
market share. Karen's asking the idea. I think she's coming back to this idea. It almost seems crazy. It seems like something out of a sci-fi novel, political and sci-fi novel. How could companies do this?
And they
Why in the
continue
world
to
would they
do,
do
like-
this? It seems crazy.
It doesn't
Yeah.
make any- it's like suicide. It's like financial suicide.
Yeah.
Market share suicide. I don't know. I mean, for Adidas to come out with that male with that bathing suit.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Hideous.
I think it's offensive. It should be offensive to women. I don't understand. Why there's not a true revolt. Every woman, Republican,
All you
Democrat.
have to do is look at all of the responses, and there's not one positive one that I go deep into the responses just to see if there's anybody that likes it, and I can't find any. And on any of those social
makes
media,
no sense. It makes no sense. Look, Target's doing the
Yeah,
same
they
thing.
are.
I
In fact, they
know.
just came out
Target.
with a new. I was trying to look it up, see where I found it, but a new trans line.
Oh
of
yeah, for
clothes and
Pride
books.
Month. Yes, I saw it. I
Yeah,
saw
they got messages on shirts and books. I think a couple of those messages are, quote, trans people will always exist, end of quote. Queer. That's another one. Boy, that's clever. Cure transphobia, not trans people. And ask me about my pronouns. So you'd think the Target is putting itself
on a
in the bullseye.
onesie. On a onesie. I mean, I haven't
a
been
onesie.
On a
Yes.
onesie. See, that's the difference. If you have an adult, you want to make a suit, you want to
Yeah.
make adult clothes, that's different. It's the onslaught on children. This is the difference. I'm going to be very consistent. I believe in a big individual and a small government. So if a big individual, an adult, wants to make decisions on their personal life or that's on them. It's this indoctrination on children and what we're doing to our societal norms now and what is being normalized to children. And I don't understand why. And I know there's a lot of people out there, but both parties need to come together. All people need to come together and just protect our children. Period. End of story.
Look,
And-
George, Yeah, look, Jared, on screen. You see on the screen, Elizabeth Hagen Larson shared this Target.
Yeah.
Top.
I mean, it's hideous. It's just it's
As Russia and China are making sure their men are very masculine.
There's none of this going on there.
Or not even a
zero.
Now, I believe in the freedom to do what you want as an adult.
Yeah.
But if you don't think
Yeah.
that Russia and China are building men in their country,
They're playing the long game.
100%.
Let's make America weak by making them pay attention to this stupid stuff.
Well, that's why when George brought up again, and we brought up Salo before, that 1984 interview with Yuri Bezmenov about the 4 stages to ideological subversion
It's
and how you
chilling.
take over a country without firing
Yeah.
one shot. It implodes from the inside. Demoralization,
exactly
destabilization, crisis, and normalization. Demoralization. And he said it takes 20 years. And in 84, he thought they were sufficiently demoralized, us as a country.
Man.
In 84. And then destabilization. We've seen all the destabilizing internationally, and he gives his example of destabilization. And then crisis. He says it takes about 6 days for a crisis to really, I think he said 6 days. Now it's 6 minutes with social media. But then you create a crisis, and then you hear the word normalization. What do we hear during the pandemic? This is just a new normal. Get
Yeah,
used to
that's
it.
right. And this is well said.
it's
And
all there.
And in 1984,
Scary.
in 1984, what was not possible then is certainly possible today. And this is why totalitarianism is a relatively new concept in the scope of human history, because we simply didn't have the tools. We didn't have the ability to actually control what people think. That would have been impossible outside of the digital age. Today we do.
Yeah.
I mean, you can send a message out at the speed of light, really. And you can do that to the masses. And so you're at a point here where governments are leveraging this technology to control what their citizens do. This is unbelievably scary, but it is absolutely real. The social credit system that you see that's really sort of enabled by a social media infrastructure would never have been possible just a few years ago. But it is possible today, where you see what websites people are trafficking. You see the thoughts that they're putting out on social media, thoughts in this country that are protected by the First Amendment, one would think. Those things are going to be used for employment decisions. And by the way, if you don't think it's already done right now, you're nuts. You don't think employers are checking Facebook? You don't think employers are checking other social media accounts to see what kind of person they're bringing in? And before, it was actually to check to see if you had some character.
Yeah.
You know, what are the things that you stand up for when no one's looking, if you will, at work? Today, it's going to be about whether you adopt or whether you reject this woke ideology. It's all over corporations. Don't kid yourself. We haven't mentioned Levi Strauss. Last fall, Jennifer Say, she was a longtime executive at Levi Strauss. She wrote a book about what she thought was this sort of radical ideology that was consuming Levi Strauss from the inside. And she wrote a book, and it's called Levi's Unbuttoned. The woke mob took my job but gave me my voice. And so here's what she wrote, quote, "Today's executives reared these kids with a I'm not your dad, I'm your friend parenting philosophy, and they chase their children's approval. They want to impress their woke kids with their own progressive bona fides." So now Levi's is doing a gender neutral clothing line, and the new CEO, Chip Bergh, announced that earlier this month. And it's as if what happened to Bud Light never happened. I mean, Bud Light has literally self-inflicted a massive market downfall of their own company. It's a 170-year-old company. And these companies are acting like that's irrelevant. So what's going on? Well, it's obvious what's going on. They say, look, yeah, I know this is an inconvenience right now, but these people really aren't our long-term customers. This isn't who we're really targeting, no pun intended, in the future. Who are going to be our real bosses? Who's going to be buttering our bread here? Where are we going to get our revenue from? Where are we going to get our support? Where are we going to get our protection from?
Yeah.
Right? It's not from the average consumer. It's from the central planners
Well, I mean, I'm
Bro,
just,
in
I-
Washington, D.C.
just
Go
play
ahead.
this out. I mean, you got to play this out. I mean, I've talked to a buddy the other day because I have these conversations lovingly, but just tell me what's great about this country now. I mean, what's ever been, but I mean now. I mean, what's better about what has been built back better? Because he voted for Biden. What has been built back better? So tell me. I mean, I really want to know what's been built back better. What from economy to relations to border to international stuff to parent schools. What's built back better, and where does this go? Where does this go? How can we sustain? How can we sustain this onslaught of illegal immigrants? What are they going to do? Who's going to take care of them? How is it not cruel? Someone sent me this meme. I don't know if I sent it to you guys, Saulo, in the group. It's a meme where it has all this trash in California and homeless area. It's all this homeless area and trash. And it goes, thank God California banned plastic straws. I mean, do you see the insanity? You're gonna go ape shit about banning plastic straws.
Exactly.
But then you have this homelessness where there's shitting everywhere and there's trash and there's homelessness. I mean, look at the homelessness here. It's building up.
I know.
Look at
I
it
know.
here. I mean, don't blink your eye. I mean, where does this go? That's why I try to get it away from the tribalistic labels, and I say, let's have a discussion about ideas. Are these ideas good? Don't label them yet. And then where do we go from here?
Bro, next time when if there's a war, we're gonna hear their bombs and their guns, and they're gonna hear from us like, "Ay loca."
Yeah.
They're gonna hear us like, we're not gonna fight.
We're not, but brother, we're getting weaker and weaker.
Yeah.
Our recruitment is low. Don't think
Yeah.
there's not a push
Yeah, I
for
know.
a draft. Don't think there's not a push for a draft. There's going to be a push for a draft. I'm just saying, where does it go? I mean, this is not a good thing. Again, on this idea of these ideas being pushed forward. But look, there's a lot that we can always talk for forever. I mean, I know we're at 45 minutes, guys. I think we should wrap it up. But
Yeah.
But we'll see how this Daniel Penny thing materializes. I mean, we'll see what happens before that grand jury. Look, I mean, they can present what they want to that grand jury. I mean, I'm not sure how New York conducts their grand juries as we do in Texas, but it'd be fascinating to hear that, what happens with the grand jury. I'm almost curious if Bragg is being politically strategic, where he indicts them and then suggests to the grand jury to no-bill him, so he can say, "Look, I did my job. Grand jury did it. Who knows?"
You know
a
that.
lot
You
of
know that could
prosecutors,
happen. Yeah.
and I told when I was DA, I said I'm not going to use the grand jury as a cover. If I don't think it should go to the grand jury, we're not sending it. And then let.
Well, it's
the chips
actually
fall
one of the
in it.
whistleblowers. One of the whistleblowers said I had a problem with that they against the January 6th, that the FBI was conducting January 6th prosecutions, and they had convened a grand jury subpoena. And he thought that this seems crazy because this is based on an anonymous tip. You're misusing a grand jury, and they silenced him. They revoked his security
Yep.
clearance, and of course,
That's-
ultimately they fired
Yeah.
him. But that was one of his gripes.
Yeah.
I don't think it was Marcus Allen. I think it was either Garrett O'Boyle or Steve Friend. Good stuff, man. Good stuff.
Well, guys, have a blessed. Where's the camera? Solo. Which one? I don't care. I just want to look at people. Which one? That one. Okay, guys. Well, thanks
Make
for
it personal.
We really appreciate your support and tuning in. I hope these are helpful conversations and discussions on exercising our critical thinking in our mind and our freedom to speak and share ideas. And then, if we're not persuasive, so be it. If you're persuasive, then we'll adjust too. But if you're a prayerful person, pray for our country. If not, then have a blessed week, and hopefully we'll see you next week.